Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited to have the one and only Russell Sylte, General Manager, COO at Hacienda Golf Club in La Habra Heights, going to be talking about growth mindsets. He also has his team joining him this morning on the webcast. Good morning, Russell. Thanks for joining us on the Catalyst webinar series.
Good morning, John. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be with everybody. I'm lucky enough to be invited once a year to participate in the Catalyst series. And so, John, thank you. And thank you for your work. Each time we connect, I get to know you and your family a little bit more so. I think I'm lucky enough to be able to spend time with a lot of different people, both in and outside of the industry, with the CMAA, with the college program that I'm in. But I'm most comfortable with you, my fellow PGA professionals. For me, turning professional and joining the PGA of America in 1983 and receiving my membership in 1989, and just being able to be with my grassroots leaders it's unique for me. So thank you. I've been lucky enough to be a general manager going into my 25th year now at 3 different properties here at Hacienda for the past 5 years. And with me, I have my food and beverage director, David Sutton, and I have my controller, Karina Nahara, and my head professional, Jonathan Golia. We have a team of 10 leaders. And I can easily say that of my 3 properties, my current team is my most enjoyable team. And I feel funny when I say that because I loved my other teams as well, but this team is special. And they're special because they're learners. And Karina, who's with us, said something so beautifully a couple days ago. She said, we don't come to work, we come to learn. And there's a saying that comes up later in the presentation that says that the way we should really rate ourselves is how others on your team rate themselves. When one of my team members describes our culture as that of a come to learn, then I think we're lucky. And so thank you for being with me, everybody. The topic growth mindset, it's an interesting topic, and is it worth it? I remember when John reached out to me earlier this year, he asked me what would be the subject, and this just came right to my mind, and then I followed up with, is it worth it, with a question mark, and it came right from the soul. And as I continue to dive deeper into this, I think we can all agree it's absolutely worth it. And it's what moves the world forward. And as humans, we're just, by nature, we're curious. And just seeing the recent landing on Mars and the process that it took to get there is fascinating to me. But I think, and Jonathan said something earlier this morning when we were visiting, because I'm a teacher by, that's my strongest niche, I think, in the business. That's what I have my master's in. That's where I learned to, I think, develop a growth mindset, because I found that in teaching, you have to learn to talk about the same fundamental a million different ways, as well as continue to learn to stay enthusiastic about the subject. And by the way, that's exactly what leadership's like. Leadership is exactly the same as teaching. You have to continue to learn to be able to say and grow others uniquely and stay passionate about it. But Jonathan, why don't you share the discussion we had this morning about teaching and the growth mindset versus fixed mindset? I think you'll find this interesting as teachers yourselves.
Well, basically, what we were in here getting ready for this meeting, and you had this slide up on the TV screen right in front of us, and I'm like, when I see growth mindset, I immediately go to teaching, because that's the style of teaching that I have and the education I have been on teaching is there's two different types of mindset. You have a growth mindset or you have a fixed mindset. And to briefly summarize those two, a fixed mindset would be sitting on the range hitting 100 7-irons in a row from a mat where there's no variables, everything's exactly the same. Where a growth mindset, you are constantly challenging the student. So one shot they have a 7-iron, and then the very next shot you give them a sand wedge, and then the very next shot after that they have a driver. So they're constantly learning after every single golf shot they hit. And what I find as a teacher is their performance gets better so much quicker. Now, with that comes some consequences, which is a lot of failure. And failure is good in this sense because now they learn what not to do, and they learn that hitting 7-irons over and over and over don't help. So it's a teaching strategy that I use to this day, and growth mindset, that's what resonates in my mind when I see that, and it's will forever be in my teaching method, if you want to call it that.
There's a podcast I'm listening to right now that I want to just give the name to everybody. It's called let's see, this podcast is called Business Movers, and it's the story of multiple great companies and their startups. And I'm just listening to the Walt Disney startup right now, and it's quite fascinating. It reminds me of what Jonathan said, the continued failures are what has made Disney what it is today. You know, it's funny, I really challenge though, is it worth it? I think about when my son was born, we had 5 generations alive. And today, I was just laying in bed thinking this morning, we have 2 generations alive. And of the 5, my great-grandfather lived to be almost 100, as well as my grandmother. But my father, I lost at age 45, and my mother, I lost at age 59. And this will lead into the blue zones, which will come up in the presentation. My great-grandfather and grandmother had a very calm life, and they lived the longevity and the health. And then I think about my father, my mother, and the drive to succeed and grow, and how it cut their lives short. So that's why I wondered, you know, is it worth it, and how far should we push ourselves? So the presentation today will talk about the blue zones, which I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read this book and learn about this group of people, but we'll discuss that. I'll talk a little bit about my journey. We'll talk about being a learner and a teacher. We'll ask the question again, is the growth mindset worth it? We'll talk about my current leadership team and one of our targeted improvements for this coming year coming out of COVID and why. And then we'll have some closing thoughts. So the Blue Zones. The Blue Zones is a fascinating book. And I think if nothing else, can you see the whole screen right now, John? I'm assuming we can see the screen that's on my laptop here. So the Blue Zones the book came out in 2008 and again in 2012, and it's a study of centenarians that live in different places in the world, and I've noted those places here. And in summary, they found these pockets of the population that have that are in their 90 to 100-year-old plus, living very healthy lives. Some look and live like they're in their 60s and 70s. And these scientists have gone into these pockets and they've studied their lifestyles. And it isn't just what they eat, although, by the way, eating the beans, the whole grains, the vegetables, very little meat. And the meat that they do eat most commonly is pork, interesting enough. But they've created this story of how we today can take at least some of that lifestyle and put it into our lives, because we're all thriving. I mean, I think about John. He drives 1 hour and 10 minutes every single day to and from work. He lives in one location, drives out into the desert, and he has 4 children at home, age 13 is the oldest. I mean, that's a sacrifice. And I know it's worth it to him because I can hear the passion in his voice, and he's providing for his family. But how healthy are we? Are we creating longevity, or are we running ourselves out? By the way, there is a Blue Zone location here right near us in Loma Linda. It's a Seventh-day Adventist lifestyle. So scientific studies, they suggest that 25% of our longevity is dictated by our genes. But 75, and that's why I highlighted this, 75% is determined by our lifestyles. That's fascinating to me. And what's interesting about the centennial is that they never moved. They lived in the same house. Their grandkids moved in. The parents moved in. They just stayed in the same location. And one thing I found fascinating in the book is so many lives usually are lost in the early 80s. But that extra 20 years is brought on by togetherness, the family being together, communication, waking up and having a worthwhile reason, and their habits. And I found these interesting. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is it's an alternative. It's a blend for all of us that are just grinding away. And I'll get into my story and next. So I share in the grind with you. But they garden. And they garden certainly for the freshness of the food, but they garden for movement. The exercise of getting up and down and moving around, it keeps them from falling. By the way, their exercise is simply walking. They don't have gyms, of course. They're not wearing their bodies down. And they eat slow. And I think about all of us in this hospitality industry. Is eating slow possible, right? I mean, we're all eating at our desks, and we're eating as fast as we can. And the problem is you can't monitor if you're full or not. So they eat slow, and they eat a lot of nuts. And as a result, they eat less at mealtime. And one of the things that they do that I've started to do is I think at the end of the day, alcohol in moderation there's value to it. And in this case, red wine, and this word is pronounced Cannonau, and it's an Italian wine. This actually came from the group that were in Italy. And it is basically an artery scrubbing wine. And you can buy it at a wine and spirits. You can Google it to find out where. And it's fantastic. So there's some health benefits with it. And again, they wake up with purpose. They wake up knowing that there's people counting on them today. And they just go from a spiritual side. I think having the balance of that in our lives, it's interesting. We have, as I mentioned, a group of 10. And a couple of our leaders, their Sunday mornings are critical to them, and their time with God, and to the point where if they're in the hospitality business, and our members are here on Sunday, so we're talking about this, but the point is they will give up their career path, I believe, or give up their position on our team if they don't have that opportunity to have that Sunday morning in their lives on a somewhat of a consistent basis. So again, it goes back to a growth mindset. Is it worth it? To some people it is. Again, it's finding the balance. The two last things I thought were interesting about the Blue Zone's population is they don't have big homes. And we talk about that here. I think about some of our homes, and you go into one place in the house and somebody goes into the other place in the house, and pretty soon you don't see each other. But in the Blue Zone's lifestyle, small homes kept everybody together and kept interaction going. And I think that's very healthy. And lastly, they're so positive. And by the way, being with you all here, having gone through the pandemic together this past year, it sure has been interesting to watch the people we serve, our members and guests, to observe their personalities in a crisis. And it sure has been enjoyable. I think you all probably relate how close we've gotten to each other as a team. I mean, our 10 or 12 people that we kept together during this time, we're lucky because we were all certified mindful trained professionals. We had finished that training just prior to the pandemic, and it was fascinating to watch the intuitiveness of the team, the creativity, the adaptability, the responsiveness, the diversity of the group. And we're in LA County, which actually in some cases was very helpful because their rules of golf, so to speak, in the pandemic were very clear, and we followed them. So it was very comfortable for us. The point is we stayed positive for it and through it, and we didn't really see that in everybody. So how does my journey compare to the Sylte journey? It doesn't compare at all. It's not even close. You know, I've worked in 3 different states, mostly on the West, and I've gone to school in 5 different states. And I just think about, you know, one move I made when I graduated from high school. I lived in northern Idaho and Coeur d'Alene in the summertime and Mesa, Arizona in the wintertime for 6 years, back and forth, back and forth. Met my wife at age 19. We were married a year later, still married today, but just kept dragging her back and forth, maintaining 2 places. And then we made a move into Bodega Bay, which was a wonderful move, by the way, because it was right 1 hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was a very calm place in Sonoma County, and both of our children were born in Santa Rosa. From there, it was a comfortable move into Sacramento as a director of instruction. And it's really where I learned that a growth mindset. I always knew that a growth mindset was critical. When my father passed away, for some reason, a saying popped up to me that said, "If it is to be, it's up to me." And that just gave me full responsibility to make sure I had full control over what the future looked like. And then once I was married, now I have a second person, and then children. So the growth mindset became more strenuous, if you mean, more responsibility. But when I went to work for Ken Martin Sr., the most highly decorated PGA member at Hagen Oaks Golf Complex, where we had 18 teachers, and he hired me as a director of instruction. It wasn't because I was a good instructor. It was because I had a strong administrative skills and was a successful teacher in the Northern California area. But you can imagine joining a team of 18 teachers fixed in and growth mindsets, and coming in as a director of instruction, and it's like coming into 18 chefs, right? There's so many egos involved, and I just sat back and I watched Ken Martin Sr. I watched how he created engagement and ownership and vision, and he just gave me for 4 years I was with him. He gave me the gift of learning how to learn and how to lead. And from there, I moved into Auburn, California, and did a 7-year startup, funding, permitting, construction, opening. Wrote the business plan for the model, and I remember Lehman Brothers flying in on a helicopter and presenting the business model to them to get funding. But this is where the growth mindset really impacted my life. After 7 years there, I knew that I wanted to expand and work for a large management company and learn truly how a company with 10 or 15,000 employees has a vision that comes from a headquarters, and how it's owned and executed at the property levels. So I left my family for 2 years because my son was in 6th grade, and we just would not take him out of that. He started in kindergarten, we would not take him away until 8th grade to start high school. So for 2 years, I commuted from Northern California to Southern California, and I would typically work about 6 weeks straight, and I'd go home about 4 or 5 days. And I can't imagine how much I lost in that 2 years of, my daughter being in 4th grade and my son being in 6th grade, and even my relationship, all for the career, all for the growth mindset. And I wouldn't change it because I love today. But I just wonder, there's a question mark there, and I wonder how much of life, it may take away in the long run. Could we live longer if we lived a little bit more like the the blue zone individual. I think that the PGA of America, I have to thank. I remember being so passionate about the game, and to think that I could actually make a living in the business of the game. I remember giving my first golf lesson, and I just remember my first business school, and I just fell in love with learning because I was so passionate about the culture and the business and the people and the optics of it. And I loved how it made me feel. It just felt so good to learn. And so again, I was learning for career because I was committed to that. But it gave me the want to learn other things. I learned music, and I learned martial arts, and I learned about concealed carry and strategic shooting, if you will. I'm a ferocious reader, and I love working on my golf swing, and I work every day on my body to be sure that I can hit the fundamentals correctly in the golf swing. I work on the golf swing every day, and I play very little, and I still have a hard time breaking 80. It's so annoying. I wish I was a crafter of the ball like Jonathan, who just stepped up mindlessly and hit it, but I guess I would have to work at it more. And now I've started a certification training in a school in the East, and over the next 24 months, I'll invest almost $40,000 into the school and achieving a certification. And what's fascinating about this school is I'll be in a class with 45 people, and there'll only be 2 or 3 people from America. 40 people will be from all different places in the world, and we're reviewing case studies, and it's just so fascinating to listen to these different mindsets and these different strategies. And just learning has become just a daily task for us. And I don't know if the word's task, it's a daily passion. What's really fun, though, I think, as you're a learner, is teaching. If you really want to be a great learner, you have to teach what you know. And I think that's what we do best here. We have fallen in love with leadership. We've fallen in love with growing ourselves and those that we're responsible for. And it was when I received my master's in teaching that I committed to being a teacher of other teachers. And that was a turning point for me. This is my office, and it's funny because the bottom office is John Wooden's office. I don't know if you've been to Poly Pavilion at UCLA, but this is all glassed in, and this is pictures of it. And the picture on above is my office is meant to be as his office. His office is much more dramatic than mine, but I think you kind of get the point. And to the right is large erasable boards in my office. And really, it's not my office, it's our office, and it's quite frankly, it's a classroom. First thing that we did when we arrived here was clean out this office and clean out all the walls and put erasable boards on 2 of the 4 walls. It'd probably be on 3 walls, but 1 wall has a window on it, so we needed to keep that there. I think one of the most enjoyable things for me is when I come into my office and one of my team leaders has been in there strategically planning, drawing out on a whiteboard financials or processes for a new system. And we just are constantly bouncing ideas, and we leave them on this wall, and they stick and they stay. And eventually it becomes integrated into our operation, and the wall gets erased and we go with something new. It's fascinating. But I mentioned earlier, you measure yourself by the people who measure themselves by you. And I think I want to let Karina talk for a couple moments about, is the growth mindset worth it? And, what are some advantages and disadvantages of it?
Well, I think that having a growth mindset is only an advantage. To stay complacent it doesn't give you purpose. And I think if you continue to grow, I have 2 young daughters, and that's what I instill in them. We learn even the simplest things. If you learn something new every day, that's already a win for you. And to continue, it's a gift that you give yourself.
So you're in school right now. You're in school till 10 o'clock, 3 nights a week. How does that affect your family? And I mean, is that taking away time from your husband and children? We've
incorporated my education into our family. So I sit at
Wait, let's repeat that. That's really, she just said we've incorporated education into our family. And what you mean by that is the scheduling of it.
Yes, we're on a strict schedule. I actually sit on at my kitchen table with my laptop, and my girls will sit across from me. They do their homework while I'm in class. And my husband will read a book or play video games on his phone. So we're all in the same space. When I take my 10-minute break that they give us, that's the time where it's like, okay, did you have a difficulty on your assignment? Go brush your teeth. You're gonna go to bed. I'm still gonna be in class. But if you need the light on because you're afraid, then flag me down. I'll mute my microphone and I'll come get it for you.
See, that's a perfect example of blending the Blue Zone's lifestyle into today's lifestyle, and in a growth mindset becoming an advantage. Because I think about recently preparing this piece, I actually excused myself from my family and went upstairs to be by myself, to not have a distraction or to be able to focus, and that's wrong, really. I mean, the right way is to not jeopardize that family time and just bring learning into that. Why sacrifice, to learn? Let's do it together. David, how about you? So when I arrived here, by the way, Karina was in accounts receivable and then accounts payable, and we had actually a CFO and a controller in play. We had a huge admin office, and now we have Karina and an accounts payable full-time person and a member services part-time. And Karina is our controller and also our assistant general manager, our AGM. So you can just imagine that journey she's been on, starting here as a server at a very young age. Now she's a CMAA member, and she's in school, and just a perfect example of a growth mindset being worth it. And you know what's fascinating, by the way, about our team of leaders is in the C7 business model that we're in, a Hacienda Club, which is as you know, a member-owned property. Typically, your compensation packages are based on the size of your club. So, the size of your membership and the size of your dues line and your total revenues will dictate where your executives are being paid. And we have, other than our superintendent and our general manager here, we have all first-time department leaders. All of us have been together for 5 years. We've only brought on one new assistant food and beverage manager, but their compensation levels are probably about 30% less of where they could be in the private club industry in Southern California. And quite frankly, it's my job to continue to grow them in this model to make them a strong candidate for these jobs as they come up that fit within their lifestyles. And that's my responsibility. That's my inspiration to them. So it's funny, is a growth mindset work or not? I'm kind of challenging us on it, but at the same time, teaching how critical a growth mindset is to continue to enhance your lives. And maybe that's not good. I don't know, but now David started at the club in food and beverage in a server bartender role, and he's gone through being a food and beverage manager, and now he's a food and beverage director. And the difference in the two, as you know, is he now oversees the back of the house, the chef and the kitchen and the cost of goods besides the cost of goods in the front of the house, the beverages and the service team. So he's advanced beautifully and is setting himself up to take on a, you know, we have a $2 million food and beverage model. He's setting himself up to take on a $3, $4, $5 million food and beverage model. But I guess I'll ask the question, David, is a growth mindset worth it? You know, what are the sacrifices that maybe you would regret?
Well, I don't think, you know, I think you laid out, you know, what the extreme example is of the possible regret within a growth mindset, which is stepping away from your family, making those sacrifices that you might look back on, like what were those times, did it jeopardized in any way? And I think at this point, you know, the bubble I live in and I maintain right now is really small. I live close to work. My kids are at a school really close, and which allows me to, if I need to step away and come into work for a little bit, if I come, you know, sit at my desk, try and learn something, do a webinar or a class. It's really nice to be able to be close to work, to go do those things, but then also to have my bubble close to get back to my family. I don't see any downside to the growth mindset.
No regret. And again, the perfect example of blending.
Yeah.
You both are blending. You both have young children. And you're both blending it in very well. I envy that, and I think that's sustainable. I think that's sustainable, and that's a healthy approach. So, being a learner and a teacher, the culture of growth mindset. I guess if somebody said that to you prior to us all working together, what would you have thought? What does that feel like? I mean, if somebody said to you, "We come to work to learn, not to work," how would you have reacted to that? And I guess I'm asking, you know, we have 30 of us on the call. It's a fascinating question. Are you coming to work? Or are you coming to learn? Any feedback on that, Jonathan?
I think before I started here, if you asked me that question, I would say no. It's cool. I'm coming here to learn. I'm here to do my job and go home. So
wow.
It's a different perspective now for sure. Especially going through the mindfulness training too. It's every single thing we do is an opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, there is no good or bad. It's just, it is what it is. It's the way I see it is, it's another opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
So it's weird to see that change in my answer in 4 years, to like see it go 180 degrees in another direction. But
that's dramatic.
It's true.
By the way,
it's true.
I think I play golf like that under normally comfortable conditions, and I just look forward to every shot I hit. What did I learn from that shot? And I think it's, you know, what's funny about the culture of a growth mindset and saying this is, it kind of creeped up on us, didn't it? This wasn't the end. You know, normally you're a good planner by starting with the end in mind. I don't think we knew what the end would be like.
Yep.
And I think when we interview, if we ever lose anybody on our executive team, the interview process will be quite fascinating, because we could not hire a learner. If we couldn't determine if someone was a learner or not, they wouldn't work on this culture. That's why I love this team so much. That's why it's very sincerely my most favorite team in my 3 clubs leading, is that it's just a group of learners. I think this, we're reading a book right now as a group called The 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn, and you really should put that on your reading list. It's actually been more impactful on the team than I thought. It was recommended, actually sent to me by Dick Hoplin, and I read it and I said, this is a good book. So we bought one for everybody, and we read a chapter each week and report on it. Again, it's called The 12 Pillars by Jim Rohn. Please add it to your reading list. one of there's many things we learn in there, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And our most recent chapter was about, the people we spend time with, our friends, and there's 3 categories of friends, and some of us don't have any friends, which I found fascinating, and I'm actually the one that probably has the least amount of friends, because these are my friends, and not outside of work, but at work and outside of work. I really have maybe a couple of friends, handful of friends from high school, and my family, and that's enough for me, because the rest of the time there is no more time. But you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So think of us, we're a group of 10 learners who are just together every single day, holding each other accountable, and we're mindful buddies. Sometimes we just experience things in the service industry that we just have to get it out, and we're good listeners. And other times, you'll get tunnel vision, and someone will say, "Hey, wait, let's listen to that trend and find some nuggets in there that we can pull out of the 90%, 10% concept." In the 10% of people who aren't happy, there's still some silver bullets in there that we need to try to locate. And it's just being around the kind of people that we are makes us better. Okay, so one of the most important learning pillars in the 12 pillars, and I wanted to say this to you very sincerely, was investing in yourself. And you're on this call this morning, so we're alike. You have a growth mindset, or else you wouldn't be here. There's a young man I interviewed. We're lucky enough here in that people reach out to us quite frequently to ask, to have some mentee time through the PGA and through the CMAA. And there's a young man named Ricky Potts who I've been following a while on LinkedIn, and finally we connected, and he actually reached out to us to spend some time with us. And I've just never met a young man so eager to learn. He reminds me a lot of our leader, Robin Sylte, who is just an ultimate learner. And I hold Robin in the highest regards. He's such a humble individual, and such a mindful individual, and yet so qualified in his credentials. Well, Ricky Potts is our next Robin Sylte, although he's not a PGA member, he's a CMAA member. He was able to clearly show me his education schedule for the year and the investment he was going to make into that education schedule. And I thought, that is a great best practice. And we have a budgeted education amount here in our club, and I've asked all 10 of our executives to come back to me this year with their education plan and their budget for it. And I want to talk to you as a PGA member to a PGA member. I was biased to the CMAA for many years, although I've been a member for 6 or 7 years, and I'm working on getting my certification now. I'll have it next year, which is an amazing journey. And I just would recommend, if you intend to continue to lead in the golf industry, and you want to move up into facility operations, beyond golf operations, you have to join the CMAA. You just are going to, there's another agenda of learning, especially if you want to be in the member-owned model, the C7 model. The CMAA provides some spokes that we don't have in the PGA. And I want you to take that very seriously, and you're welcome to reach back out to me to talk further about why, because it's an investment. It's not an inexpensive association, but the education and the quality of people is fantastic. We have 5 CMAA members at Hacienda, is that right? And we have a total of 4 PGA members, meaning we have you, I, and then we have 2 apprentices. So we have 2 members and 2 apprentices, right? So we have 9 individuals on our team that are involved in these 2 associations. And also LinkedIn too. It's funny, again, LinkedIn to me was if you're looking for a job, but the fact is it's exactly the opposite of that. Our team is moving and starting to get their LinkedIn's up, but it's where you can find the most creative ideas, and you can connect with some of the most creative people. And it has to be a staple. If you have a growth mindset and you're not on LinkedIn, take ownership of your LinkedIn and use it daily. You will love the stimuli that comes to you in leadership and in your craft. And you know, it's funny, as I look back on my career at the different properties I was at, I absolutely accelerated where I was given autonomy, the leaders that held me back were, you know, I learned the most from them of how not to be, and you know, when I talk to different individuals in our mentee sessions, and I learn what their facility is doing as far as investing into their growth, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating that the human capital investment is not a top priority for organizations. I'll give you a perfect example. Our controller, Karina, was on a webinar by chance a couple of months ago. And in this webinar with other controllers, she learned about one of the COVID tax reliefs. The C7 model was not eligible for the PPP loan, but there was a tax credit available for keeping our staff working. But it was sort of hidden in the agenda, if you will. It's $100,000 that we have coming back to us that we'll see in April or May, because she was on this webinar and she heard this and she asked the right question and she contacted our controller, and now she started the paperwork for it. I can't think about the ideas that you get when you sit at a webinar, you learn these things, you bring the creativity to your club. You've got to invest into your human capital. It could be the most important investment in a business. I think when I think about being a learner, I can remember earlier in my career, you know, everybody wants that first head professional job or that general manager job or that food and beverage director job, and they're getting better today than I am if I'm not getting better. It's almost like being an athlete. I thought of learning, and not any longer, thank goodness. But I can remember thinking of learning as being an athlete. I have to get better today because I want the best job. And I know the candidates out there competing with me are getting better today. That was a lot of pressure. Yeah. So, but I was, as an athlete, the competition of learning was compelling. But again, I think, you know, it may take some years off of life. And leaders are readers. I think you saw the picture earlier that I had up of my office. I probably give out one book or so a week. They come back most of the time, and if they don't, I don't care. We just replace them. I think I probably have 7 books lined up right now to read, and it's just so fun to wake up every day and finish every day with some form of stimuli to keep us enthusiastic about you know, being inspired. By the way, a leader, if you were to ask Russell, what do you think it makes a leader? Maybe 3 words in order. I would say an inspirer is by far the most important trait that I think a leader brings. The second is having empathy, having the gift to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes so that you can start with them from ground zero to move them forward. And lastly, you know, being a visionary, being able to know what the end looks like, and then inspiring others and having empathy with others to you know, build them in, to tie them in, to help them create ownership of that vision. It's funny, we do on an annual basis, a handful of us each year will do a 360. And as you know what a 360 is, it's, for example, I did mine last year. Everybody that works alongside me anonymously rates me. Some people on different levels of the team, and you get this data, and you're excited to get this data because you want to discover your blind spots. What am I missing? How can I be better? And that's, by the way, what led to our Certified Mindful training. Is it came forward that Russell's good at bringing us programming, but he's not good at following through with the teaching of it. And in my mind, it was like, look, I'm excited to bring you to water, but I don't have the time to help you drink it. And that was a shallow thinking. And by the way, that's so then we hired a program that could do it for us because I just wasn't skilled enough to be able to do it. My point is that when you do a 360, you have to be mentally completely open to, gosh, what am I going to learn? And how am I going to react to it? And am I going to be defensive or not? And we have a couple individuals that are going to be going through this that I'm not sure if they're ready for it yet, if they're mature enough for it yet, but I'm excited. So to study the self is to forget the self. You have to forget who you are. Let the ego go. Look at the data and decide how you want to handle it. And again, is the growth mindset worth it or not? Some people are just comfortable being who they are, and they're going to live to be 100. Some people want to grow, and maybe we're going to live to be 80. But I'm trying to help us find the balance. Maybe we could live to be 90 by combining both. I think the second bullet point I've talked about, and then the last bullet point is at Hacienda, we teach leadership, and that's quite frankly what we do. We learn it and we teach it. We're very mindful. We seek to understand. UDA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And by the way, the book is called Certain to Win by Chet Richards. It's a wonderful book. It's a military-based book, actually studying the Blitzkrieg and the UDA of Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. Intuition that we have as a group from having gone through a lot of strain together in the pandemic. We move so quickly together, and we career plan. Not only do we career plan with ourselves, but we have individuals that will visit with us, and we'll evaluate and we'll assist their aspirations, and we'll help them write blueprints how to achieve. I think right now we have 3 or 4 people in our pipeline that we're working with on just that. We enjoy doing that. Again, we love to learn, and quite frankly, we do it selfishly because we get better as learners when we're teaching. Anything we want to add to this that's popped that I missed?
It's awesome.
You comfortable? Mm-hmm. Okay, so why is a growth mindset worth it? This is an interesting piece. This top picture is a picture I took not long ago. Those are thank you cards that have been sent to me over the years for helping others. And it's emotional, and I continue to get them today. And at an early age, I started keeping those because they're what make it worth it, right? I'd give up 10 years of my life to be able to touch, to touch others. So it's worth it. And then in the right is our team was featured on Boardroom Magazine as a team of mindful leaders. We invested in a large plaque for each team member, and I think that there's a proudness that comes with having helped facilitate that, and those families and their kids. I mean, when you're on the cover of a nationally recognized magazine like this, those are milestones in your career. And probably, selfishly, why is a growth mindset worth it? This is called a focus wheel on the right-hand side. And we did this exercise during mindful training. And basically, this is the value that that my brand brings to a club. What can you do for us? Well, I'm a learner, I'm a teacher. I'm going to be an empowerer. I'm going to think creatively with you, critically with you. We're going to systemize. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to mind the 4 Qs, which is the quality of service, quality of product, quality of facility, and intangible quality. We're going to long-range plan. We're going to be financially strong. We're going to succession plan. So when we leave, we have people lined up for our positions. And lastly, we're going to protect your sanctuary. And without a growth mindset, we wouldn't be able to facilitate that circle. And lastly, the perseverance. I still can't, this is just a fascinating story to me, and I wish I knew more, but the perseverance, NASA's most advanced rover to date. It was a 7-month long, 292 million mile journey. I mean, it came, Hutan Kia's father was on this project.
Wow.
And it came right here down the road. And you know why? Because we want to know if there was ever life on Mars. Who cares? But we care. We're spending billions of dollars. And what's fascinating is the rover when I wrote this, they were exploring an ancient lake that existed 3.9 billion years ago. You know, it reminds me of a saying, once you think you know something, you realize you don't know anything. I mean, we want to learn, but we're just touching on it. We're just touching on it. So again, is a growth mindset worth it? Yeah, there's the gratitude that comes with it. There's a book called How to Fill Your Bucket, and basically the way you make people feel and it makes you feel. And as a commitment to our teams, you have to be an inspire, and to be an inspire, you have to be enthusiastic. I mentioned the focus wheel execution, that's your value. Our leadership team, we have, like all of you, we have been, grinding through COVID. Forget having an infield. We were the infield. In a typical model, you build your infield and you're in the outfield and you get the balls and you get through the infield. That's your job as a leader, support. But we were the infield. There was no infield. I mean, everybody was not working. So here's where we're refocusing now. We call it the BCDLG model. Build the infield, coach the team, engage with the membership, learn from both, and get better. Now, can you imagine that it's that simple, and as much of the learners we are, that we have to go grip, stance, posture, and alignment once again. And this, in closing thoughts, the legendary cellist Pablo was asked why he continued to practice at age of 90. And he said, because I think I'm making progress. He replied, that's emotional. And I hope one day that personally I can write something like that. And I think lastly, so is it worth it? I think we have to ask ourselves, what is our legacy? Is it kindness, calmness, being there for others, which we see in the blue zones people? Or is it impacting the world to leave it a better place? Therefore, sacrificing the simplicities that has kept the centurions alive for a decade, at least a decade longer. And can we have both? And I think that, yes, I think we can. I think blending the two together is possible, as my team expressed. And I think lastly, in closing, just remember that, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And people will remember how you make them feel. And the way you're going to make someone feel is how you feel. So balance yourself out. Find some blue zone lifestyle, keep the growth mindset, but don't overdo it. People need you and your family needs you. And that's the end of our presentation. Anything else to add? Okay. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that. John, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Hasi and the golf club team. Very enlightening. Lots of questions that have come in, as to be expected. Can you elaborate a little bit on OODA and what that is to the Hasi and the team from a service standpoint?
Yes. So OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. Observing is an example. Getting a tee time is difficult, like all of our clubs. And we continue to listen to the feedback. We bring forward the issue. We spend the most time in the orienting phase of that issue. We met with our president yesterday. We've been talking about it probably the past 2 weeks. We're talking about a very big policy change when it comes to guests. So you spend the most time in the orienting stage, and then you make a decision, and then you act. Some OODA loops move slower than others, but we have found that with our vision of three simple words, pride and belonging, that our OODA loop moves very quick, because we know and we give the freedom that make the decision that will make you prideful and that will make the member prideful. Take no time. Don't go ask for permission. Just do what you think is right for you and the member. And that's called a quick OODA loop. Now, there's a lot more data behind the OODA loop, and it has to do a lot with the intuitiveness of a team. And the intuitiveness of a team comes from how much time the team's been together and what kind of drama. The person, go on Amazon, order the book I said earlier called Certain to Win by Chet Richards, and enjoy it. It's a treat. And it's not an easy read. Just read through it, highlight it, read through it again, and make some notes, outline the formula for OODA. Thank you.
And you had mentioned a couple of times on the presentation that you had brought in an educational company of some sort, Mindful You. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes, I believe that both Craig and Rick, the mastermind and the monk, spoke on a Catalyst session. Has it been a year?
It was during the pandemic. So
during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the person asking the question was on that Catalyst or not. I think that it's very funny, to be honest with you. Rick reached out to me, and they used us as a pilot. And he said, we were forming this model. It's mindful training. It's going to become a certification process, and I wonder if you're interested. And they actually was introduced to me from John Bernaro, who's the owner and editor of Boardroom Magazine. And I said, I have no idea. I said, I don't know if we need you or not, but come spend a day with us and discover our blind spots. So they came up, they spent time with us. We played golf together. We continued to, talk about the pilot, and oh, it was a blessing. I don't remember what we invested in it. Do you remember? Was it $5,000?
5 or 6.
We invested $5,000 or $6,000. It was a 26-week program that ended up lasting about a year or so, about every other week. And and now we have our second layer team members going through the program. we can go back to it. And right now we're in certified mindful team training as a group. So it's a different process. I just recommend it so highly. Individually, the way we did it as a team is it was part of our Thursday morning management meeting. So we're usually together at about 60 minutes. And part of that session with them was an extra 30 minutes. We would do the training together and work with our mindful buddies in the week or two gap and come back and present and graduate, complete the task to become certified.
Russell, I've cherry-picked some of your fantastic ideas before in the past in terms of getting the team together, an annual or a quarterly meeting of the service team and developing a team agreed-upon culture board. I've used a couple of different clubs since I saw you present on it. Do you still do that? Do you still have a culture board?
Yeah, our last one was, it was 2019 or 20, our last TI board. Did we do it before the pandemic?
No, we did not.
Just one before the pandemic. 2019 is our last board, and yes, we do. It follows the same model. It starts with our vision. It moves right into our core values. And it moves right into our department missions and we call them target improvements, TIs now, rather than goals by department. And we changed it to TIs because a goal is either you achieved it or not, and a TI is that we made progress, and there's different levels of progress. We will redo that this spring in using the same model where we include the committees, and we're actually taking a little bit more aggressive approach this year. Again, in the C7 model, the member-owned model, controlling the written word is very important. That has to do, it's a governance process, and I was talking with our attorney yesterday about it. He was very complimentary of this step we're taking, which really it was taught to me from David Voorhees at Big Canyon. He was very complimentary of this step we're taking to enhance the culture board that you just brought up, John. And I think you would enjoy this next phase of it, and I'd be happy to share it with you whenever you'd like.
Indeed. I was the first dibs on that for sure. Those are all the questions I've got today. We ran a little bit over, but thank you very much, Russell and the Husky team, for coming on the webcast this morning and presenting wealth of information on growth mindsets, and you can see the benefit that it's had on you and your team, and I'm sure it would benefit many of us. I've been in discussions with the monk and the mastermind about doing something here at Monterey and the benefits that they can bring in terms of improving our service attitude and consistency. Want to remind everybody that the Catalyst webinar series is a weekly webcast. Next week we have the one and only Jeff Jones of Just Sports, founder and CEO, who's going to come on and talk a little bit about his experience and as an African American golfer, California section for the past 30 years. If you all to join us next week. Jeff has been on the podcast before. He's very candid, he's very honest, and make for a presentation. Hope to see you all next week. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on the cast. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you, John. Bye, everybody. Thank you.